Hi, welcome back to Future Fast, and we once again have Neha with us. And for those of you who are here for the first time, thanks for coming on to Future Fast, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And if obviously you have not subscribed to Future Fast, then please first click subscription button and let's join Neha. And obviously, if you're first time, you don't know who Neha is. For that, you'll have to listen to the previous one. So Neha, once again, thank you so much for making time. And I understand you're busy. You travel a lot. So let's talk about travel for abled or disabled. I know this abled. We had a conversation, and this is specially abled and all that. You gave a long talk on language and what is acceptable term. Maybe it's a good start. Also, you could probably introduce disability from what is the acceptable terminology, so that people can be little clear about it, and then talk about what is the travel for disabled. We did talk about why you started it, but how is what we could probably understand here.
Sure. So hi everyone, and thank you so much, Nanju, for such a great introduction again. So when we talk of persons with disabilities, the right terminology is either person first terminology or identity first. And some people with disabilities themselves prefer one over the other. So it's for a person with disability to decide whether they want to choose the person first or identity first, or they're okay with both of them. So when we talk of person first language, it's like a person with disability, person with blindness, person with mobility impairment, like that. So it's always the person first who happens to have any sort of disability. And the identity first language is disabled person. So, or an autistic person or a blind person. So that is an identity first language. And people and this is also kind of suggested by the UN as well globally, that these are the two sets of languages that you should use for persons with disabilities. But the other languages or the words that we kind of hear most of the time is differently abled, specially abled, or in the UAE, for example, you have persons with determination. That is their formal language, persons with determination. Like in India, the official word for persons with disabilities is Divyangjan. Like you have a divine organ when you have a disability, you know. So these are mere euphemisms that kind of are given to make a person with disability like something special or different.
Yeah, I think this terminology of Divyang is also only after this Americanization of specially abled came in. Otherwise, it was not really Divyang earlier.
Oh, this has gone by our dear Modi ji, by the way. So,
probably.
So, you know, when you want to shift the focus from the real issues that persons with disabilities face, you coin these terms so that the whole community brings about this is wrong, and the focus shifts from the real issue. Like my parents really never bothered that what they would call handicapped, physically challenged were the words, and the challenges
handicapped was a very popular term, right?
Yeah, and it's still used in some countries in France, like in their regional languages. But then the point is the real issues are not getting addressed. People are so occupied with the real issues, they really don't bother what is being called, especially in a country like India. And so when this Divyang thing happened in India, all the activists were like writing to the government that this should not be there. And, you know, this is the wrong word, like, okay, Harijans, like you give a different word to them. It means you're segmenting people based on a criteria, right? Which is, again, wrong, because you're putting people into a group depending upon one kind of feature of
But
what they have as a human.
so even disabled person is about putting a person, grouping it also as abled and
But
disabled. So how is it any
no.
different in that sense? I
So
mean, the
why?
argument wise,
Yeah,
you can
yeah, yeah.
have an argument
Sure.
about trying to say Divyang or specially abled is wrong, but grouping is what it is always, right?
So it's
And
like
maybe here the
disability.
argument is actually for the better of it, to try to give them little more superpower, like you said the UAE term, right? What is that?
Persons with determination.
Determination. Right. So,
No, so
anyways, let's get out of the language politics of the nomenclature. So, uh, how is the business of travel for disabled evolving, and how Planet Abled is making that change?
I think in terms of the business being evolving, there are a lot of challenges as an industry and as a society that we need to overcome. Like almost 8 years ago when I started, I had to really tell the hotels that there is a business out here. And the biggest challenge that we face is, one, disabled people are not even considered as paying customers. So when you are not a customer, then there is no product or services that are made for you,
Oh, why would they consider disabled don't pay?
because disability is all traditionally has been always related to charity, that disabled people don't work, they don't earn money. So in my school, like when I was in school, like when parents of my classmates got to know that I have parents with disabilities, the first question I was asked was, who pays the school fees?
Wow. Okay.
Because there's a perception that disabled people don't work. And my both parents were working despite the disability. And where I come from, in the city or the government accommodation we were living in, women usually never worked. And I come from a family where even my maternal grandmother was working for time. So uh, for in my family, it's important that you work. And of course, we had financial constraints, so that was a requirement too. But then this is a perception in most people that they don't work and they don't have the money. They are always dependent on someone else. And I'm not saying it's always the society at fault. Sometimes even disabled people feel entitled. Like, I'm disabled, why should I pay? I should get it free.
Oh, wow.
This also
Do they?
exists. Oh,
Okay.
yes. I've met rich disabled people saying this in my face. Why do I pay 1,000 rupees for a day trip when I'm disabled? I should get it free.
Okay.
So that's like, the products and services are not designed because when you are not a market. So then,
So if you say market, what kind of numbers are we talking about in
a good
disabled?
question. Yeah. So persons with disabilities are the largest minority in the world. There are 1.3 billion persons with
Seriously?
yes.
What
One.
about India?
I wish I had a number, because um, by the 2011 census, we have 2.2% of the population as disabled. And as WHO puts it, or by their estimates, 15% of the world population has a disability. And
What?
that's
So, come again?
average.
Okay, yeah.
15%.
Technically, 1.4 out of 8 billion is, yeah. Okay.
That's 15%. And when you include their families and friends, that makes it to 25% of the world population that is impacted by disability. Like me, for example, born to parents with disabilities, I could also not travel. So I am also impacted in a way because things were not designed for me, because I have family members with disabilities. And then there are 1 billion 60 plus people who are ever growing, the aging population. 46% already have a disability.
Come again. You're saying, okay, the age as a disability.
Age, like age acquired disability. So
Age acquired
46%.
disability. Okay, not disabled physically, but
No, that's
because of
also.
age, they have limitations in climbing and things like that.
So that's one problem we have in India or emerging nations. when we say disability acquired due to age, we don't consider it as a disability. We say it's age. But
So
that's,
what do you mean by acquired disability with age? What
so
is
for
that?
example, you are in your 60s and you have a severe vision impairment, you can't see, or you use a hearing aid, you have a severe hearing loss, you cannot hear, you have a disability, you're deaf, you're blind.
Oh, they do get considered under disabled itself, right? No, you're saying that is
They are
not.
considered, but in like from a societal perspective, we don't consider it as a disability, and that's not a recognized disability in India.
Okay, okay.
Because
Okay.
it's mentally, we think it's not disability, it's just age.
People still say that. I think those
Of
days
course.
are over, right?
No. Those days are not over. Even sometimes, even when people have mental health issues, it's depression or
Come on,
some.
you can't be mixing mental issue, health issues with
That's a
disability.
disability. That is a disability.
See, uh, I mean, you need to have a little better definition for disability then, right?
Okay, let me
Disability,
explain what we
yeah.
have, what we consider disability. So
Okay.
another big challenge I was saying was, when we think of disability, the picture that comes to our mind is a ramp and an access and a wheelchair. That is what we consider a disability.
Traditionally, yeah, yeah.
Yes, but disability is much wider spectrum. Out of 100, only 10 to 12% of the people are wheelchair users. The rest have other hidden or visible disability. So when
Correct.
when you have a visual impairment, or partial visual impairment, or you have a hearing impairment, you're deaf, or you are autistic, or you have an intellectual, psychosocial, cognitive, learning disability, or
This is like you just want to put 80% of the population into disabled.
no, so
Oh,
these
seriously,
are
if you
disabilities.
actually say all these are disabilities, I tell you 80% of the world population is disabled, and possibly 80% of our political leaders globally are disabled.
You see, when anything you have that limits your daily functioning and you need assistance or accessibility in any form, you have a disability. In countries like UK and US, if you have cancer, say stage 4, and you are on chemotherapy or radiation, and you cannot walk much because you don't have the strength and you use a wheelchair, you are a recognized disabled person. You enjoy disability benefits.
But
Because
those things are for a short term, right? How do you measure these things then from a
no,
return
it's
point of view? Because
then it's a
people do
temporary,
recover, they come out
then,
of it.
then that's a temporary disability. But it is a disability. Even when you have a fracture, that is a temporary disability that you acquire. Because you
Okay, from your travel business point of view, your focus obviously would be a more or less a permanent disabled
not really. So, like
or
for
a
example,
lifetime disabled, if not a permanent, a longer term.
it's not necessarily, but a large portion, yes. But we have had cancer patients, people on dialysis, who have traveled with us, because when they are traveling, they need that accommodation. They need a dialysis center while they're traveling for a long term, or they need to put their chemo on hold, and there might be, there are some medical interventions required during the travel. That is a need that needs to be met in
So
terms.
I in fact came across somewhere they are talking about traveling for medical.
That's medical
Uh,
tourism.
no,
Medical
medical
tourism.
tourism is for getting treated.
Mhm.
So travel needs of medical like this, what you're talking about,
That
right?
is
Where
accessible
they,
tourism. Yeah.
yeah, what do you call it? Accessible tourism.
Accessible tourism or inclusive tourism, nowadays we are kind of using it interchangeably, but there is a difference in both. What When we talk of accessibility and when we talk of inclusion, they are kind of interrelated, but they mean different things. For accessibility, I need accessibility. It means, say for example, I have a mobility impairment, I need a wheelchair. So for me, accessibility is a wheelchair. So when we talk of inclusion, it's more of from a design perspective. Is this place designed for me? Like in the sense, is it designed in an inclusive manner that can um, uh, cover the needs of all types of people in all its diversity and human forms, that no one is excluded. That is kind of inclusive design, or inclusion. That inclusion is when everyone is invited to a place or to any service or product, and they can access it.
So how do you define planetable then? What do you take care or support? Are you like agnostic to disability or what?
We are, I would say, non-discriminatory to non-disabled people. We don't discriminate.
Language again, okay.
So in the sense, Planetable started off as an inclusive service provider, not focused on just persons with disabilities, but spreading the idea that we all can travel together despite our different accessibility needs or no accessibility needs. So like, we are the only company in the world till date that mixes people with various disabilities and non-disabled to travel together. So like in one group, you'll have a wheelchair user, a blind person, a deaf person, a person with cerebral palsy, and non-disabled travelers in one group.
Okay, sounds very inclusive, but how convenient is it for those people?
So it's about how we make the preparation before they come on that trip. It's challenging for us, but the whole idea was, my parents have two different disabilities. Right? So my mother is a wheelchair user, my father is blind. So when I face the challenges, I have pretty much lived with two different types of challenges and accessibility needs, and getting to, make it accessible or overcoming those challenges. So when the idea of creating a travel solution for persons with disabilities came into, and I looked for solutions around the world, I saw there are travel companies, boutique travel companies, but they are focused on one single disability. There's a company for wheelchair users. There's a company for blind people. There is a company for deaf people. But two things. One, it did not work for me and my family. And there are perhaps more people like us. Second, when disability is deciding where you travel and with whom you travel, it is also, again, discriminatory, because you're segmenting people based on the disability they have. So a wheelchair user can only travel with wheelchair users. I mean, how odd is it, right? And a blind person can only travel with blind person. I mean, how odd is it again? So it actually did it as an experiment. I mean, for me, if I have to create a company, it has to be inclusive. Let's mix everyone together and see how it goes. That's it. It was just like that, because I could see no other way or no other solution that could convince me to do it. I'm like, mix it, we'll figure it out. And that's how and the kind of ripples I never expected happen. So the first trip that we did was a local trip, and there were 42 people on that trip. And there were 22 disabled people of various disability and 20 non-disabled. To my surprise, the non-disabled most of the time what happens is the non-disabled have never interacted with a person with disability, or they have had some kind of weird experiences.
So these
In the past.
non-disabled were not the caretakers or family of the
No,
disabled.
these are like who perhaps have never met a person with disability in their life. And
so like a travel companion for
it's a travel buddy. That's a term that we
buddy.
have been using.
Okay.
And so they are given a briefing on what is the right body language to use, what is the verbal language to use, what is right, what is dignified, what is undignified, before they can be on the group. They have to be sensitized, because out of ignorance or lack of awareness, they really don't know. And the same has been with all the establishments that we have been, whether it's the hotels, whether it's the guides, whether it's even the drivers, or
Yeah,
we have
I've
trained
never
everyone.
come across any physical infrastructure which is ready for disabled from any other point other than saying that they have put up
Wheelchair.
a ramp,
Yeah.
right? Ramp and wheelchair.
And
So
that's
how
a
do
global
you
problem. Do you know that?
well the community I live in, we decided we should make it disabled friendly, and all that was done was this. So so how do you address the other things? Is there some kind of a guideline? Have you published something on your website that, okay, do stuff, don't stuff, something like that?
So that's what we are now doing. It's so like, just to give you a background, when we started as a travel service provider, we cater to everyone. Like, and sometimes people cannot be even put into groups as well. Sometimes people have multiple disabilities. So like a wheelchair user who is blind and autistic. So
Okay. In such scenarios, you need a family member to take care of, right?
not really. It depends on them. So like we always do an accessibility need assessment. For example, high functioning or people on the autism spectrum can be on their own. I've had people with autism travel on their own to Singapore on a bachelor trip. So it depends where you are. Sometimes they might need a family member because of familiarization and controlling of triggers, but sometimes if you prepare them well, so for, say, for example, for people with autism, you need some kind of familiarity. So you prepare them before they can even travel. There is a homework to be done before they can travel on that trip. And say, for example, people with dementia. We have had people with dementia travel alone with us because their family member was busy and they wanted to travel, and they can travel with us. It's about getting what is a safe place for them, identifying. This needs homework. This needs work, understanding the needs, and then designing it according to them and their interest. What is the safe place for that person with dementia? Where on the spectrum of dementia are they? How would they feel? Sometimes even before they go for a holiday, you need to have a lot of meetings before, so that they can get to know the person who would be there with them, the guide, for example. So you need to have those preparations.
Yeah, all these things will possibly make it very expensive, right? Relatively
Yes.
speaking.
Yes.
So how many of this 15% of the world population who are officially disabled can actually afford it?
So in terms of affordability, so like that's what we are working on. So in terms of when we talk of the money, this 15% population has is $13.1 trillion annual of disposable income.
Are you serious? I mean, this is probably the grants, aids, and government policy allocated budget towards these things,
But they
right? That
have
must
this
be the money.
money to spend. They
But
have this money
who decides? The decision is made by the bureaucrats, right? So it's not correct
they
to
are
say that
earning their own money as well. They are earning their own money too. They
that
have the
must be
money.
a fraction of it, right?
Yes, it must be a fraction of it.
Like,
And
say, in India, do you have government of India funding a travel for these? I mean, is there like a budget for a disabled to travel? Like they give a
no,
subsidy for traveling for a religious purpose. Is there a
you know
subsidy for disabled travel?
what is the disability pension in different states in India if you are not working?
How much?
300 rupees per month to 2,400 rupees per month.
I mean, I think you can straight away go to court because there is a
This is
government of
decided
India
by the
rule on.
government.
No,
This
no,
is
but
decided by the government.
I
State-wise
think
varies. South
see,
has more than, of
see,
course,
it's
the other
pretty
states.
illogical, right? There is a daily wage limit, so it cannot be so
Oh,
bad.
well,
It's
yes,
lower than the daily wage. A monthly
yes,
wage here is lower than the daily wage. How is it practical?
because we are not even the vote bank. Who cares?
The percentage you're saying is significant.
Yes. So, but the problem is we are not even counted. By the 2011 census, I said 2.2%. World
Yeah,
average, if the world average,
I think one of these significant minority communities in India is Jains, who are about 2%. So this is actually more than that.
but the Jains have the money. Okay. So let me give you a background. When we say 2011 census, 2.2%. And that time, due to the law that was passed in 95, we had only 7 disabilities recognized.
Mm-hmm.
Autism was not a disability until the new law came into force in 2016. Autism was not a disability, it was a treatable condition. Even one of our, the minister for disability said autism can be treated in one of his famous speeches. So in the new law, RPWD Act that was passed in the winter session of 16, came into force in 17, that has 21 disabilities recognized. So if you're talking today, one, the number of disabilities have increased. So there are
3
a
times.
lot more. Yeah. So now there are a lot of more people, but the census hasn't happened. And the new health survey that I think started this week, or I think a couple of days ago, they have
But
removed.
irrespective, it's up to the individual to go and get some kind of an ID done, right? So it
Not
doesn't
everyone.
demand a census.
No, so that is one, but they are still not gathering the data. And do
Yeah,
you know how
that
difficult it is to get a disability certificate? I'll come to that later. But coming on the numbers, we have now 21 disabilities. And in the National Health Survey, they have removed the question of disability, that if you have a disability or not. So again, an
why is that?
opportunity, because the reason strangely is given is because the team is not well equipped to decide whether this is a disability or not. So remove the question.
No, but if you have clearly defined what are the 21 disabilities, it should not be a challenge, right?
That you should ask them, not me. But also, it's not just 21. There are a lot of groups of disabilities that cannot form into these 21. And that is a disability. So when we are talking a health survey, there is a lot of the mental health conditions also come as a disability. It's a psychosocial disability. And
Uh,
and not everyone gets a disability certificate. Even for autism, to get a disability certificate today is like a Herculean task. The percentage of disability in your certificate depends upon how much bribe you pay. Yes.
Okay.
First-hand experience for my mother.
Is it not something from your medical doctor gives, this is the degree and that's why they base it on it?
Yeah, so the doctor takes bribe in government departments in most of the states. My mother's disability is over 90%. She was given 56% because my sister said, I'm not going to give the bribe. I know people who have very small, say, like small amputation or deformity in one hand, they have a certificate of 75%.
So the benefits depend on the degree of your disability?
Yeah, most of the time. So you need to have at least, in some cases, at least 40% or 55%, like where you are on the spectrum, kind of. It varies and it changes by the railway concession has their own percentage. The income tax has their own percentage. So it varies by that.
Oh,
And
interesting.
what kind of, like, you make buses free for disabled people in some states, but the bus itself is not accessible for them to get inside. What is the point of getting in free? You have a railway concession, huge railway concession, but if a person cannot get inside the train, what use it is?
Trains usually they can, right?
How do you
Bus,
think a wheelchair user can get inside a train?
I've seen them place the ramp and then get them in and then they take out the ramp.
So that's a very new thing in the last few years, but they are not available at all stations. In
Yeah, earlier
couple
I've
of
seen
stations.
people actually physically lifting those chairs up and
Yeah. And most of the time, India, people don't even have wheelchairs. Even if they have, they are like the common ones that are just given away. That actually is more hazardous to most people's health rather than benefiting their quality of life. Because you need a wheelchair that suits your needs and posture and disability. We have nothing. Like, even if, say, I have to buy a wheelchair for my mother, I have to put it from my own pocket. I bought the hearing aid for my father, I have to put it from my own pocket. My mother is on a physiotherapy for 25 years.
so
It's
you're
on my
saying
own
you
pocket.
can't claim it on insurance. None of this. Okay.
No, so there's a limit to it, and that also again varies by state. Like UP is worse in that. My parents were UP government employees. It's like I have to go through 3 different cities to get that passed, and then bribe at every level to get that money reimbursed. It's better I just put just a separate account for that money then, instead of going through that whole tedious process. So like the central government employees are much at benefit. They have cashless things, benefits going on, and irrespective of whether you have a disability. So that's a plus. Some states are good in public healthcare, like Kerala, Tamil Nadu. The public healthcare is brilliant. But yeah, North is not that as good.
So among the customers of yours, how many of them can actually pay by themselves, or how many of them are dependent on this government aid or some other grant or some
So,
charity and such?
so for our focus has been to focus on traveling with dignity. People pay for themselves when they can afford it, because that's a
So you
business that's,
primarily cater only to that
yes.
group.
Yeah, but now what we are trying to do is, so what happened during COVID is I got time to think. And so for first 3 years, we did everyone, whatever budget they came in, okay, fine, like we'll do it in that. But you cannot deliver quality service when so much is going around in the background, so much work and effort being needed. You cannot deliver quality at such low cost. So I went broke by default. Then I had to kind of change, like, what is the right thing to do for me as a business? So then you change your target audience to the more affluent disabled people who can afford. And in that too, a large portion of them remains people from developed nations who can afford to travel with us. So like, we are not just
So you're just
coming
following the
to,
money.
no, I am coming to it. Yes, I have to follow the money because I have to pay the bills.
No, no, I'm not saying it's a negative thing. It's what
Yeah.
the world does, right? That's what you
Yeah.
also said.
So, but when COVID happened, it made me realize we are not making the impact that we wanted to do, because the gaps are not getting closed. How many people can really travel with us? How many people can you take to only accessible places or make it temporarily accessible, and then it's gone and other people cannot access it? And again, the perception around only wheelchair accessibility is a big problem. So you need to have awareness about digital accessibility. If a person cannot access your own website, if they cannot access the travel content, how they can make an informed travel decision about where they want to travel and where they want to put the money? And if they are spending the money, why should they get a below par experience? If they are spending the same money, they should get accessibility equally. Plus, there has to be a more standardized way of systematic change that can bring accessibility into the core. Because once that happens, then the economies of scale come in and the cost of traveling goes down. Because there are a lot of people, especially in India, who cannot afford this travel. And if they want to go into even the explore their own city, the monuments are not accessible. So how they can go? I mean, they don't have access to it. Even the affluent disabled people haven't been to the monument in the city they've been living all their lives. They have never been there, or they are denied entry into restaurants. I mean, this Saturday only, because Saturday, all the malls are filled. So we decided not to go to a mall because there's a parking line and stuff. So we just me and my parents wanted to have lunch. It took us 2 hours, and we could not find any place which was wheelchair accessible out of the mall also. And then you go to the old place, okay, and then just have whatever is available at that accessible place. Because that is the reality of most Indians who cannot even afford a car to move around and roam around the city for 2 hours to find a place that is accessible. Then it goes into crawling or being lifted or being, treated in an undignified manner, which is also not right. So what can we do to, solve this problem at the core? The only thing can be done is to make accessibility and inclusion mainstream, so that Planetable as a service provider is no longer needed in the future. I want to go out of business from the travel services business.
Uh, Perhaps you can be in business by doing travel service, but perhaps you can stop being an activist, because all that you're talking is more like an activist and less of an entrepreneur.
No, so
So,
being an entrepreneur is solving the problem. So I'm kind of now shifting the business more from the B2C side to the B2B side. So we had been a destination developer right from the first day, whether it's training, making places accessible temporarily or permanently, and
But
consulting
much
them.
of it seems to be a policy problem, right? I mean,
Yes,
it
it
has
is
to come more from a government side. So
it is
how
a
are you trying to address it as an entrepreneur?
capitalism.
Okay.
Capitalism has more power than the government. It can control the government.
Well, everything follows money. So
Yeah.
yes, so how?
So you just show them that there is money in this. So I'll tell you, when I reached out to the hotels 8 years ago, they were like, they don't travel. Why are you bothered? We have one room from a star rating compliance, only 5-star, 4-star and 5-star have one room to get a star rating. And sometimes they are not very good rooms because they are made just for compliance
Oh, they
sake.
are required to have just one room for the disabled?
Yeah. Some
Why is
4-star
it
and
there
above.
is required to be one room for the disabled? Isn't it like every room should be disabled friendly?
No, unfortunately not. I wish
Okay.
that was the case. So in Europe, there is a
Is that
chain.
so much of a complex to make every room disabled friendly?
No, but the perception is that it has to be wheelchair accessible to be disabled friendly. So then the room has to be big, the bathroom has to be big. So like, so for what I just told was I telling you before that we are more kind of trying to work more with the businesses to help them become accessible, the tourism boards to help them become accessible. We are now creating a global standard for accessibility and inclusion for the tourism industry. And that we will give it to the industry for free, like the criteria. This is the criteria if you want to see where you are. And the first stakeholder consultation we held at the United Nations Vienna in February this year. So we had hotel chains, tourism boards, museums, and people with various types of disabilities from developed and developing nations. Because most of the time, any initiative or standard you see globally is very developed nation driven. And majority of the disabled people actually live in global south, or you say the emerging countries, for of course the obvious reasons. So the representation never comes in. So we held this consultation, and there is this hotel chain which was there with us, and they have hotels in US and Europe. So they said, we always thought we are losing revenue on one room by making that one big room which is accessible. We didn't know that 88 to 98% of the people don't need that big room because they are not wheelchair users.
And they're still disabled.
Yes. So for them, the accessibility needs are different. It's pretty easy to actually make it accessible and very cost effective too. The problem is lack of awareness and the ignorance that accessibility is only wheelchair accessibility. You go to a hotel chain and say, are you accessible? No, we don't have a ramp and a toilet. What about other things? The whole concept hasn't even come in. And sometimes even disabled people in India who haven't had the fortune of traveling the world or being exposed to what is possible don't even know what is accessibility for them. They think we are fine because we can move around with assistance. But, you know, when we say accessibility for the deaf in airlines, we'll say, oh yeah, they can manage by themselves, it's going great. This is what, you know, deaf activists have told me in India. We find the only problem that is faced by is wheelchair users. Can you communicate with the cabin crew? Is the entertainment system accessible? Does it have captions? The security video that is shown, is it accessible for you to understand what is going on in that video? Are you able to follow the instructions or hear the instructions that is being said by the crew on board? No.
If blind and deaf, then you need something else to communicate to.
Yes, I mean, it's not very, some rocket science is actually pretty easy.
Yeah, there are tools anyway.
We have so much accessible assistive technologies available today, which can easily be integrated and you can, you know, be seamlessly inclusive. It's that they just don't know. And that is why they don't know the market. That's
So
how big
you're
is the market.
making this infrastructure building as your business now?
Not infrastructure. So accessibility is not just infrastructure. Accessibility is technology, communication, information, and human as well.
Right, right.
So like, it's not just the built environment that needs to be accessible for a person to move around for the
So this
disability.
is a travelable version 2 is actually nothing to do with travel, but
Planetable one.
yeah, planetable. Planetable is nothing to do with travel,
No, it
but
has
now
everything to do with travel. So let me explain. So when we are talking of creating a global
the
standard,
new version that your new version I'm talking about, or you
so
continue to do the travel also.
yeah, of course, why to say no to the money?
Okay,
And
okay,
create wonderful experiences until other companies are well equipped to create
but
equally wonderful experiences.
okay, okay, but now planetable is moved to Europe,
Yes, expanded, not moved, expanded, just spread
so
away.
you continue your efforts in India as well.
Of course, why not?
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so we are like more of a global company. Of course, there are business reasons behind as well, because now what we're trying to do is we need money, and India is not investor friendly for us. They pat my backs for everything that I'm doing good work, but they don't see my numbers and they don't give me the money. So their loss, not mine. But coming to what we are now trying to do, giving more clarity on that. Yes, it has to do everything with tourism and hospitality, but it's more like create what we have been doing in a more non-standardized format to put it into a structure and make it systematic so that it goes from top leadership down below. That we have to do this accessibility and inclusion in all the stakeholder businesses that happen to form part of the tourism ecosystem. Whether it's the tourism board, they can, their members in that region, they can ask them to do it, because then it more comes from the top authority. Then whether it's the hotels, the monuments, the
Who
museums.
who in globally, is there somebody who's doing something brilliant or
Let
in
me
this
first
space?
complete what we are trying to do, and then I'll go on to that
Okay, okay,
question.
okay.
Yeah. So one is to do this standard, but it has to be followed by, and there is no formal training as well around accessibility, inclusion, and hospitality as well. So it's all about creating the standard, creating a training ecosystem and modules, then creating internal leaders in the hospitality businesses who drive accessibility. It's more like enabling the enablers so that they create more enablers, that ripple
So,
effect.
so are you working on creating some kind of certification program for these?
Yes.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Any institutions have partnered with you on that?
No, not yet. But yeah, we have
You know
global
what? I'm
partners. Global.
associated with some academic institutions, so I think some of them may be
Okay.
open to work on that. Okay.
We'll love to talk
Yep.
about that. Yeah.
Yep.
So that global certification is also more of, that once the businesses have done the homework, they have followed the criteria, implemented the standard, then the certification comes as as that, yes, they have done the work. And now they can flaunt that work which they have. So it's more about creating that FOMO and competition in the industry about accessibility. Oh, that hotel did it and they made their revenues, I should do it too. Instead of, going as an activist and asking them, you need to do it because the law says to do it.
Absolutely.
It doesn't work. You have to show them the money. You have to create competition and give them that FOMO that they're missing out on the money if they don't do it. That only will bring that economies of scale and costs down for
Totally.
everyone. And of course, we'll also give them outreach to the customers through a
And
smart
this is
platform.
actually super use case for tokenization as well. But yes,
We need to talk about that now that you
we'll
understand
talk about
more. You can
it.
help me with that. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah. So this is what we are trying to do. So, and this includes other travel companies also, that we enable them. It's not that we are being threatened by other travel companies.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
don't
The
know how to do
operators
it.
have to be in sync with that because they are touch points.
At the end of the
And
day,
Planetable can't cater to everybody for travel.
exactly. And we don't want to, because The companies, the travel companies, they know their shit well. We just have to tell them how to include accessibility and inclusion into that, because so that a traveler with disability, any sort of disability, has the freedom of choice to go anywhere with anyone, and choosing the service provider of their choice. Why limit to only few? And why these
Absolutely.
companies has to be focused on one disability? And you see so much happening, but it's very single disability focused, and that is the
So
problem.
now tell me who globally is doing something good in this? Is there anybody?
So there are companies now, say there are a couple of marketplaces selling accessible hotel rooms, or accessible wheelchair accessible trips, or trips for blind, or trips for deaf separately.
So
Again,
more
the
still
same.
a silo.
Exactly. That is where everything globally is. No one is doing everything. No one.
Okay, is there you travel globally? So is there any country which is most accessible friendly in such a case? I mean, most
So again, the question is, what do you mean by accessibility, and for whom?
across the spectrum,
No one.
most
No
friendly.
country.
I
I
mean,
would
most,
say
not one
no.
or two, but yeah,
Okay,
there must be somebody.
so
Maybe Japan.
US, no. US is ahead because in their journey of accessibility, because they had their Americans with Disability Act now almost 33 years. In July, they complete 33 years of the act.
Oh, funny, they call it Disability Act. I thought Super
Americans with
Ability Act or something.
Americans with Disabilities Act.
Okay.
So, and that has been around for a while. That actually gives the power to people to sue the business if it's not accessible. And there is a huge legislation thing going on in US. Your website is not accessible. I, as a blind person, cannot access it. Here is the case.
Wow.
You have that power. And of course, the legislation is much stronger than what you have in India. So it doesn't take 20 years for a case.
Well, the simple example of website, it's a tech driven. Many a times it is the device they carry is to be more friendly than my website, right?
No, your website has to be, follow certain guidelines to be in terms of in a workable condition with the device. So, for example, Apple devices, whether it's iPhone or iPad, Apple is a great example of inclusive design. The first company globally, out of the box, the device is accessible for all, for not just blind people, for multiple types of disabilities.
Correct. Starting with iPod itself.
Yes. So you need to, that is what everything should be like. Every product and service, inclusive by design. So out of the box, you don't need a, third-party device or third-party software or things like that. Your device by design has to be accessible. That is a great example of inclusive design.
Which place in India? I don't want to even say city, but at least a place is most friendly, disabled friendly. Within the constraints, given all the constraints, it is still the best of the lot. I mean, is there a place that you could actually, if you were to rank, probably you should do that ranking. At least that will motivate a lot of people to say, I'm at the bottom, I need to get onto the top.
Yes, yes, so that's what.
So from that perspective, anything you want to count? What about Mysore Palace, where most people visit from across the world?
No,
Or
it's not.
Taj. I think Taj is
It's
the
not
second.
accessible. No,
It's
you
not.
cannot, your wheelchair cannot go till the white platform. You can
What
only
about Mysore Palace? I think Mysore Palace can, right? They get maximum visits from across the world. That's the number one visit in India.
No, that's also not wheelchair accessible
Sure.
as per now. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So
well, okay.
see, and also accessibility is not just wheelchair again. So when you
No,
ask
that's true.
me
I agree.
accessibility, I won't think only wheelchair accessibility. That's not I'm wired. So I would say it's not complete. No place in the world is completely accessible, really.
I'm saying not completely, given the constraints, which is better of the lot.
None, unfortunately. Every place has challenges.
You don't have to score somebody 10 against 10. You can still say 5, and that 5 could be the highest versus 10, right? Or even 4 if that is the benchmark you want to keep. I mean, out of 10, anybody who scores 4 or 5?
Again, so if they will have a RAM, their website won't be accessible. If they'll so you can't just say that it's accessible. Really, I mean, you're pushing me too hard. You're pushing me too hard. Like,
Okay.
And if they were
Okay,
built environment accessible, the people might be the most awful lot of people in terms of
I want to just take the conversation separate now. Are there mistakes that you did?
Oh yeah,
You must have done a lot of them, right? So something really significant mistake that you did, if you want to share, and then most importantly, things that you have learned out of it, which will help you going forward.
Yeah. So in terms of, I mean, I made a lot of mistakes. What I think the first one was not paying myself for a very, very long time. Not even accounting my time and effort monetarily. Forget paying myself, not even accounting my time and effort. And from a business perspective, it's the biggest disaster. Like, that not accounting for your own time and effort. That I learned the very hard way. Even if you don't have the capacity to pay yourself, but you should still account for that in the cost of any project that you're doing and stuff. So that I did not do for a very long time, 3-4 years, I guess. So that is like now anything I do, like this goes in first, because you need to value your own worth. Like, that what's the value you bring to the table. So realizing that it's like you giving yourself the value that the world should be valuing. So if you don't value yourself, your worth, effort, and time, how would the world value it?
Perfect. And I can see how it's helping you forward. You don't know. So totally. I think it's a great takeaway. Tell me something now, from a point of the running this travel business, and you talked about how the technology today, obviously, there are a lot of technologies which can make much of it inclusive, unless some of them demand little more technological breakthroughs. But what technologies you see that are going to have significant impact in your line of work, right? For the disabled, which is going to change their future. What are the technologies?
Mobile phone.
I think, okay.
So you know what? Like
mobile, from a future standpoint, it will change the way things are done?
Because everything will go in there.
Okay.
So when we talk,
so already people are talking about the form factor of mobile is going to change. So it may. so yeah, okay. So everything is going to be driven through the mobile and not like, though technically, see, right now I think both of us are sitting in front of laptops. So from that respect, okay, mobile is.
No, not from that perspective. So when we talk of technology solution, the technology has to be accessible and inclusive, which currently it is not. This is what I'm saying, that I envision that it happens. And it will happen, because giving you a few examples, when assistive technology became such an integrated part of life that we don't even realize that it's an assistive technology. We use specs, right? That's a correction to your visual impairment. That is an assistive technology, but it is so mainstream, we don't even say it that it's an assistive tech. The keyboard on your laptop that you have, it's a successor to the typewriter, right? The typewriter was actually invented for blind people to write letters.
Oh yeah, it had those marks on it, so they can recognize.
It still have. We had on F and J. We still have two lines. So it's the typewriter was invented when there were two friends. They moved to different cities and they could not write letters in the late 1800s to each other. So one of the friends invented the typewriter so that the blind friend can write letters to them. The pinch in and pinch out feature on your phone that you use, that was invented for people with low vision. the texting that you use, WhatsApp and stuff, the
Voice
technology.
messages.
Voice message is different, like the typing, the text messages that we.
No, but voice messaging made it much easier, right? Don't have to
Yes.
type. I can just record and.
Yeah, and that is so good for people who are blind.
Right.
So the texting was invented for deaf people to communicate. The Alexa and Google Home that you have, that technology was invented for people with severe mobility impairment to control the environment around them. We all use it. So when we integrate assistive technologies or say accessibility into the system by design, it benefits not just disabled people, it benefits everyone. It creates a better experience for everyone. And the same applies to travel as well. You know, it has to be designed in a way that it creates a better experience for everyone. Because, you know, if you will.
So if you want to give a shout out to people to work on this thing, how do you think they can get started on?
Okay. So say as an individual, right? So
or entrepreneurs, startups, anybody, if they see what you're talking about is a huge opportunity, right?
Yeah.
One is there is a captive 1.3 billion, but in the way you talked about, right? How the assistive technology is helping everybody. So obviously, there's a larger market for it.
Yes, of course. So whatever you're designing as an entrepreneur, any product or any service, design it in an inclusive manner right from the start, because retrofitting is expensive. Doing it later is
do
expensive.
It for the weakest link, the disabled.
Yes, it becomes a great experience for everyone, because then you have kind of included all the diversity of human forms already.
Not with a thought of charity, but
no, it's makes business sense. Like I would just say, just follow Apple. Like, you know, right from the iPhone first, it has been accessible by design.
I would say from
Steve
iPod.
Jobs.
Before
iPod, yes. Yeah, I never had an iPod, so I don't know it. But yeah, so it's like Steve Jobs was always about good design. And he made inclusion the priority because it creates a better experience for everyone. Even a lot of features that you use on our iPhone are actually accessibility features, technically. Small. They were designed for accessibility, but we all use it today. So any entrepreneur making everything, and it doesn't cost extra when you do it from the start. It's zero extra cost, or maybe very small extra cost.
Right.
And there are great solutions globally. Some solutions, I'm not saying there are some assistive technologies that don't need separate devices or don't need extra hardware or software. Sometimes they will need it. But then a large part of it can be included in that phone.
Right.
And we have the technology already there. You know, we're talking of ChatGPT and Bard, and you're training the systems to do it.
Neha, one more thing, just so that you're here, do you want to give a shout out to investor community as why they should consider? I mean, obviously, all that you've said, if they have heard till now, I think they don't need to be given another pitch. But if you have to just make a small pitch, which
I've had kind of like, you know, just to give a disclaimer, I've had kind of some arguments with some of the investors. They say, do it for one disability first, then go to the next. Because that's easy. I'm like, it doesn't work like that. Because then, you know.
See, most of the people are incremental thinking, right? It's linear thinking. You know, we get conditioned, right? Go to standard 1, then standard 2, and then standard 3. So
but then this never happens. This never resolves the problem. The root cause is never gone, because sometimes if you design for, like, you know, keeping all the groups in mind, some things will overlap, you know, so you can't do one over the other. My whole life will be gone and I would still not be reaching anywhere. Yeah, so you have to like look at it as
thankfully not all investors are like that, so
find them to me again, each other.
Give a shout out. We'll give a shout out here. Let's see.
So I think the shout out to the investors is look beyond your SaaS, EdTech, FinTech, and e-com and, just consumer products. Even
See, mind you, working on disability tech or accessibility will support all of these things. Tech
yes,
needs it,
exactly. Yeah, yes, yes,
e-commerce needs it,
absolutely.
commuting, transportation needs it, every business
Absolutely.
needs it.
Absolutely. I would say every investor should make it a mandate that every business that they are investing in, it has to be inclusive.
Now we are talking.
Because,
So you're talking to investor in EdTech, automotive and transportation,
absolutely everyone,
e-commerce.
retail, education, SaaS, because India is such a technology hub. Like, we create technology solutions for the world. It's so difficult to find an Indian company to work on accessibility in tech. To get an accessible website in India, it's such a big challenge. No one does it still, until and unless you have US customers. That is the world we are living in. And sometimes even the government is the biggest non-compliant person to accessibility, by the way, even though we have the law in place for so many years.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Perhaps you should start auditing all the government websites if they are complying to this aspect.
They have that a little bit of things to show, but then they upload documents which are scanned and which are not accessible. So it's not, accessibility and inclusion is a journey. You can't just say you did it and it's done. You have to keep on, it's an incremental way, just like every iPhone comes with a new feature and it keeps on growing to create a better customer experience. The same is with accessibility and inclusion in
I
your
think you should go
products
and
and
ask
services.
money from Apple because you're selling Apple so much here. So.
I'm just impressed by them very much, not denying it at all. Because out of the box design is something that, everyone should be doing. So that's why, I mean, they are not reachable by most of the people. They are expensive. They are very expensive. So then also there is a barrier with Apple too. Not everyone can afford it.
So now, what do you want to talk about? Talk to the travel business, right? I mean, you whatever you're working on, but how do you want to get the people in travel business to look at it? In fact, many people in the travel business thought that their businesses ended, with
Yeah.
all the technology and all these make my trips of the world, right? Online things. So many travel businesses shut shop. Some people innovated, but most of them shut shop. And it has also got a lot of new players into it. But I don't think any of them have really gotten with a sense of accessibility. So how much of money is there do you want to tell them so that they get a booster pack to do better?
So in 2019, if I remember correctly, Americans with disabilities, only wheelchair users, spent 58 billion US dollars on travel.
That's 1 year or all the years put together?
1 year.
Only in US?
Only in US and only wheelchair users.
Any data on globally?
No.
Okay.
So US, Germany, UK, and Australia are the 4 countries who gather data on disabled travel. No one does data. So when I started the company, I looked for data. I could not find. I've sat at airports counting people, still could not find. So it's important to make a business case to the industry to gather this data. And a large part of our work that we are going to do now is about data as well. So we have included that in our work because if it doesn't exist, we have to create that data. And we are working on that because that convinces people, puts a business case to it. Like, this is what it is. So that is the money I'm talking about.
Perhaps that's another shout out to the travel businesses that they, could start putting their data together to share the data with each other so that collectively, at least the numbers.
But they also need to cater to them first. If you have one disabled friendly room only for wheelchair users, how much data can you actually collect? And those rooms also are never filled, not never, but very rarely filled because they are not even writing on their website in India that they have an accessible room. They think it as a shame because they made it out of compliance, not for selling.
Wow.
So on the hotel websites, it's never even mentioned we have a disabled friendly room. Only Marriott in India, because it's a US change, they follow a lot of ADA compliance and stuff. They have I think in last couple of years, they have started mentioning that they have an accessible room. Otherwise, none of them have information about accessible room on their website.
Indian biggies like India Hotels, Welcome Room, none of
Nothing.
them?
None
Wow.
of them. And I've had some very bad experiences, some of the biggest chains, because they freaked out when a disabled person was staying with them. They need training and awareness. Big time. I'm not going to name them, but I had such a bad experience as one of the biggest hotels in the country.
Why?
They asked the guy to leave.
What's stopping you from naming them? What's stopping you from naming them? Will they take you to court?
That's also true. No, I don't care. Actually, I can name them. Yeah. Yeah. So
it's not going to put you to risk, then name them.
Who cares? In the sense,
no. Think if it's not going to put you to any risk, then only name them.
What is the point of risk? And they should be called out. It's one of the Taj Group hotels in Bombay, like the biggest one. Taj Palace. Now, a guest of ours was staying there, and so he was here with.
I could try to take that and reach you to somebody inside there. Maybe offline you share the details.
The CEO knows that. I know him personally. I reached out to him personally, and that came from the top that he has to leave.
That's sad.
That's sad. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a whole story behind it. It just, it was very, very sad, and I was very disappointed.
Well,
now it's out in the public. Now people will reach out to me. What is the story behind it? Why it happened? You know. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, wish you all the very best for world-abled planetary.
Learn the name, Nanju. What is wrong with you?
It's right there behind you. So yeah. So planetable. All the very best, and hopefully, investors will also reach out to you. And all the coordinates are given right below this podcast, so you can reach out to her. And also for the rest of you, follow her and all the travel businesses. Keep following her, then you will see where the money is, and so you could probably collaboratively make it bigger and also be a part of this effort because you actually facilitate all the travel businesses also, right?
Yeah. And to the investors, another shout out, if you don't want to miss out on the opportunity of kind of changing the way travel happens on this planet, you can reach out to us. And also you will make a lot of money and change the world.
Sure. All right. And thank you so much for this. And once again, for all the listeners and audience, I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And getting all the definitions to the realities and opportunity, which is obviously so huge. So if you've still not subscribed to Future Fast, this is the time. Subscribe now. And also share it with all the people. And follow Neha once again. And do come back because we're going to get Neha to give out some predictions, apart from what we talked about in terms of the opportunity here. And until next time, enjoy the ride. Neha, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a good day, everyone.